Hi, good evening. It's February 10th, 2025. I'm Christy Boudreau, calling to order the Hatfield School Committee meeting. It's our February business meeting. And as we come back in from executive session, we want to go straight to public comment this evening. And I think we have someone with us for public comment. Welcome.
Can I just speak into this?
Okay, please do. And if you'll tell us who you are, that would be great.
Okay. I'm Brianna Yagodzinski, the mom of Brinley Yagodzinski. She's a student at Hatfield Elementary Pre-K. And the reason I'm here today is to discuss Brinley moving up from pre-K to kindergarten. Brinley has completed 2 full years of pre-K and has demonstrated clear academic and social emotional readiness, requiring her to remain in pre-K for a 3rd year would not only be unnecessary, but could also hinder her continued growth. Brinley is fully prepared for the academic expectations of kindergarten. She recognizes letters, writes her name, follows multi-step directions, and actively engages in learning activities. Socially, she builds strong relationships, communicates effectively, and thrives in structured settings. Most importantly, she has already formed friendships with peers who will be moving on in kindergarten. And keeping her into pre-K while they advance could create unnecessary emotional distress and just disrupt her sense of belonging. One of my greatest concerns is Brinley's ongoing speech therapy. Research consistently shows that language development is best supported through peer modeling, particularly with same age or older children. If she remains in pre-K, she primarily would be surrounded by younger students with less advanced speech patterns, which could slow her progress instead of supporting it. As a parent, my priority is ensuring that she continues to develop strong communication skills in an environment that challenges and nurtures her growth. Additionally, I recently met with both Brinley's teacher and the principal, who expressed concerns that Brinley is a follower rather than a leader. However, this observation does not align with the criteria for kindergarten readiness. Leadership is a skill that develops over time, and being a cooperative, engaged learner who follows instructions and interacts well with others is equally, if not more valuable at this stage. Her ability to participate meaningfully in classroom activities and navigate social interactions demonstrates her preparedness for kindergarten. I understand that policies exist to provide structure, but I urge the committee to consider whether rigid adherence to a cutoff date is the best interest of children like Brinley. I am also aware that there is an existing policy allowing certain children on an IEP who begin pre-K early to advance. Given that Brinley has completed 2 years of pre-K and has an IEP, I respectfully request that this policy be expanded to include students with late summer birthdays who have demonstrated kindergarten readiness. A flexible approach would ensure that children are placed in environments that best support their individual development. Brinley is at a pivotal stage in her development. Holding her back to an arbitrary date rather than her proven abilities could have lasting effects on her confidence, social emotional well-being, and educational progress. I urge you to consider this request with Brinley's best interest in mind and allow her to advance to kindergarten, where she will be appropriately challenged and supported. I really appreciate your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you for coming to speak tonight. And I appreciate it's a lot to come forward in a public meeting, and I know you have to go. And there's a conversation. So public comment, just as a reminder to the committee and to those who are tuning in, our public comment is never a discussion period. It's a chance to hear. And then later this evening, we do have some stuff on our agenda to have a conversation about policy JEB on entrance age.
Okay.
And so that'll be later in the discussion.
Okay.
And anyone who wants to tune in can watch us on YouTube.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and I don't see anyone else joining us through Zoom, so we can end our Zoom portion of the night. Thank you.
We are zoomed out.
And with that, we can turn to mission moments. if we have things we want to highlight where we are meeting the mission of our district.
I just came from a mission to
Awesome.
So tonight was senior night for our girls basketball team, and we celebrated 3 seniors. This is their last home game of their career, well, until tournament. So last scheduled home game, and it was wonderful. We had a huge turnout of both community members and students. So the zoo crew was alive and well, and it was really nice.
Others?
Yes, we have at the elementary school for grades 3 through 6. Unfortunately, none of the 8 of us who are offering an after-school club. But I did have quite a few staff reach out and ask about being able to conduct an after-school club. So we're doing an 8-week session starting right after the February break. And I'm excited to say that we have a lot of interest in the many offerings that we have this school year.
And can you tease us with what clubs are coming?
We have Dungeons and Dragons. There's an acting club, a knitting club, a rock band club, a math club, a board game club,
I think there's a sport one.
and sports club. Thank you.
Oh, you helped us, right?
Yes.
My kids were super excited. I need to send their stuff with them tomorrow.
That's awesome. And I guess I want to also just give a little mission moment shout out to Riley this week. I don't know if anyone else saw she got a little emotional support certificate from a student this last week, which was really touching because that's not previously technically part of her role, but certainly is something that she delivers to the district year in and year out. So I was glad to see students appreciating that as much as I think we all do. So thank you, Riley. Anyone else have a mission moment tonight? Okay. So with that, you'll notice that the consent agenda has 2 months worth of minutes on it. Anything that needs to come off of that? Great. So December and January business meeting minutes are approved. And there was a student representative report you had a chance to pre-read. And unfortunately, our student is at work this evening, but we thank Emma for putting a report together. Who is our student rep?
Emma. Oh my goodness.
It's
name's
linked
on the top.
when you
Her
go
name
online.
wasn't on it.
It is.
It's in the. She put it in the heading.
It's in the heading.
Oh, okay.
Emma Tisdale.
Tisdale, thank you.
Thank you.
So
I didn't see it.
It's on the top.
sorry about that. So with that, we will move straight in. We have sort of a dual presentation tonight in a way. We had scheduled a check-in about our sort of year-long look at SEL stuff, but we also had bumped our district mental health presentation last month to talk about student services. And so we decided they're kind of very common. And so we could have one big presentation this evening. And with that, I turn it over to Dr. Driscoll for introductions.
Sure. Let me just pull the presentation up here.
Mr. Sullivan, could you close that door? It's really loud.
It's
How was it shared to you? Because I haven't.
It was shared through email, and I thought I had added a shortcut in here earlier today.
Nope.
Right. John, is there a way I can stop sharing my screen while I open my...
Nobody's seeing it right now.
The YouTube isn't seeing it. Just
YouTube.
Okay, but
Yes,
just...
we're seeing it. So we're all going to look away so you can check your
Yeah.
email.
if you don't mind just-
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I got one earlier. I thought I had opened it and thought I had put it into the...
I will avert
Yeah, averting my eyes.
take a sip of my tea.
You can pull up Luke from that.
That's all right.
Or just stop sharing.
Hopefully you can just click that link. I'm hoping.
There it is.
It's nice
SEL
to have
post.
everyone here tonight. Hmm.
Sorry about that. I really thought I'd put that shortcut in there earlier today.
Okay.
All right. So tonight, can everyone see it on their thing? Tonight we're talking about well, two things: how we are doing with our SEL our SEL initiatives this year, and how things kind of are going culture-wise and behavior-wise, that kind of stuff in our schools. So I'm going to turn this over to Bill Fogel to start with.
Okay.
When you're ready for me to hit the next thing, just let me know.
All right, great. I'm gonna have to look over here because my laptop decided to take a break for the evening. So just to start with, and I know we have kind of some limited time, so the presentation itself's got some other longer things in it. I'm skipping through some things, but just to start with, just a question for everyone is, the percentage of teens who live with a severe mental illness, what would be your guess if you said a percentage? So at any point in our given classes, folks, they guess. I promise.
40%?
40%, okay, great, great. Any other guesses?
I would have gone for 20, 25.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually in the United States, it's 22%. So that means in any given grade that we have, 25 students, we can expect that 5 of our students are, at the level where they need to receive some kind of medical care around there. Oh, you're gonna switch it out? Sorry. Okay, I also have just gotten over a bout of laryngitis, so it could be my voice.
You don't have static on
Wow.
And for more information, just at the bottom, what I like to do is give a little resource, and that's our resources through the collaborative that does a lot of work with us. And so there's one. If you wouldn't mind clicking, because I can't. So I'm not going to go over this, but I just wanted to list out the number of staff, that we have that all participate in this. We have folks who SEL and mental health supports are built into their presentations, but we also have folks that support. And you can see it's really everybody. Everybody at Hatfield shares a piece of this. So while I'm speaking to this, I have a huge number of people who are doing amazing stuff, and I'm just the very tip of the iceberg right now. So we did a trauma-informed school training for Smith Academy staff, and that was in September. And the topics we kind of covered, you can see here, were adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. Folks have probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze response. Those have been looked at in terms of responses, and there's also a couple more, flop and fawn, which won't get into here, but are other things that we recognize when folks are really overwhelmed and at a point where they can't really make decisions well for themselves. That these are things that we see. We know child resilience is so important to remember, and we talk about executive functioning supports collaboration with our students in problem solving, mindfulness. And positive relationships are just really important parts for our kiddos, our students. And we also did a youth mental health first aid training, and these are for folks who support adults who work, in this case, work or support youth. And that was one session, about 30 folks. And really what that took a look at was learning about risk factors, learning about early intervention, and how to help an adolescent or youth in a mental health crisis or a mental health challenge. And then there's a model on the other side, which I'm happy to talk about at a later time. And then we also did the dovetails into that as we did team mental health first aid. And this is with our 11th graders. And what we spoke with them about is, again, looking to identify signs, early warning signs, how to support their peers, and then when to get an adult involved, and the different ways that they can do that. So again, trying to connect these pieces, which are so important. We also have a signs of suicide class that we run. It's actually just run in January in the high school. It's for 7th and 10th grade. And again, this is I should say all of these are grant funded that we managed to find different grant funding for. So this is through the Department of Public Health and is available to high schools and middle schools in Massachusetts. And so this is something we just did. And again, it helps to very specifically helps speak to our students about how to identify signs, possible signs of suicide in their peers. And again, who to turn to and where to get help. We're also coming up on, actually we did one in the fall, I'm going to do another one. That's SBIRT, Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment. This is our substance use screen. As we know, substance use and mental health challenges and crisis are tied very closely together. And so this is something that we do in our 7th and 9th grades. Again, this is usually run through our nurse with support from our counselors. But what this really does is identify students who are at risk. So we're looking to see at risk and how we can support them, and then how we can support them here at school, and then sometimes how we can support them out of school, how to get connected for those folks who are really struggling with substance use. One of the terrific things we're able to do this year is many things, but this DPH grant that we did with folks worked so hard on, and we were able to access that, and that provided us with a ton of things. Some of the things we highlight are our second step curriculum, which I'll be talking about a little bit, part-time social emotional learning mental health assistant who's at Hatfield Elementary School, as well as supplies, and then our Swiss Chico technology, which is actually what that is that sounds very fancy and a little European, but really what that is American based, and what that's about is having behavior support plans. And what we do is these are behavior support plans that are available for all students who may need those. We have a process that we access that through the BST, and it's something that can be done where instead of having a student that might be on several, like a couple different students in a classroom that have very different behavior plans, these are all pretty consistent, so that teachers get familiar with them, staff get familiar with them, and folks can really be supportive in that way. It's something where students get immediate feedback during class time, as well as connecting with somebody who helps support them using strategies to address things. So again, a pretty neat thing that we're able to we're literally just starting to access. We got this, I think, 2 weeks ago. We got the software, and then we've been collecting some data for about a month, 6 weeks, a month. All right.
The next slide is a behavior tracking form. This is new this year that we've been utilizing with staff. We specifically called it a behavior tracking form because we've been encouraging both staff and ESPs to complete a write-up of this that they share with me. And then we meet every Friday as a team to begin talking about ways to strategize to help students. So you can see that in September, and again, staff can fill these out if they want and share them with me. So if they have filled them out and not shared them with me, I wouldn't have this data, but of all the ones that have been shared with me, you can see that we had some in September. We started to have a higher number of ones in kindergarten and first, in which we began starting to put some things in place. And then you can see a considerable drop in the number of behavior tracking form completion papers based on some of the things that we had put in place for both kindergarten and first grade students, because those numbers then significantly began to decrease. And that's what the numbers are looking like right now.
And if I might just add here before we move on, I think it's really important to note that those kind of decreases don't just occur. That's a result of the hard work of the teachers at the elementary school and the team here, and quite honestly, the priorities that we set and the work that has been aiming to address that. We heard last year and toward the beginning of this year that one of the challenges that folks were concerned about was some of the behavior at the elementary school. And since things have been put in place, supports have been put in place for different students, we're seeing now that we are seeing the benefit of those plans. Not that there's not more work to do, but that when we put interventions in place, they work.
Because we're here, I just want to clarify, is it optional to turn in the forms, or are we asking staff, please turn in behavior tracking forms because we want to capture the data. I want to just understand that clearly. Can you clarify if it's a request or just,
It was provided to all staff as far as an expectation that they could be using this, and that the only way that we can get information to move forward is if it's shared with me. If they wanted to hold on to it and then have a conversation with parents, they could do that, but for the most part, majority of them are coming to me if they even choose, if a behavior even rises to the level of them needing to fill it out.
I just want to double check that there's not a bunch of stuff that isn't showing up because someone's withheld back the form, or we're changing the impression through not having the data. You have a question as well?
Yeah, I can
Similar,
let her finish.
please.
Yeah, well, I had that question. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I missed it. Is there a specific behavior, or is this just like any behavior? Just
No,
what exactly is being reported?
any kind of disruption,
Okay.
physicality.
Got it.
There's like a whole laundry list of things that staff
Okay,
could
that
choose
could
from.
possibly
Yes,
be on it. I
absolutely.
just wanted clarity on like what
Yes.
people were actually reporting.
So
Things that would result in a referral to the principal.
Okay.
while I know you don't know if somebody didn't turn something in, is the sense that this is reflective of kind of all that's going on? Or do you think that there's more data somewhere that isn't getting turned in?
I know that the upper grades, there are definitely, as you can see, there are even some fourth grade teachers who have filled some of this out. The fifth and sixth have not so much, but I also know that there haven't been as many detentions. I didn't ask them for specific hard and fast data on the amount of detentions that they have provided this year as opposed to last year. But I don't know if every time they've offered a detention because a student hasn't completed work, or there was some type of like oppositional attitude thing where just like a refusal, or just a flat out, I'm not doing this. Is that the kind of thing that they would have filled this out just to give me the heads up that that was happening? And then, oh, by the way, I've implemented a detention for that student. That I haven't had a conversation to find out if that's truly the thing. But again, if staff are filling these out and providing them to me, then we are reviewing these when we've got the group together every Friday, so that we can then make plans to move forward with how to support students, how to support staff.
I see a lot of benefit to having good data that's consistent. And so I'm glad it's getting collected.
This kind of moves into, right, so I think one of the things too that we're sort of talking about is we've been trying to build in training and also accentuate kind of support for everybody in the school, but for a teacher, as opposed to just a couple people, everybody figuring out like what's de-escalation. We had on the 21st January, we had what we call kind of a booster plus. And I want to shout out too, like we have this resource in that we have safety care. And we have an instructor here who's wonderful. And we have folks who take that full training. And really that's for when we're talking about physical management of students, like absolutely at this end where it's really safety and we're concerned about it. But part of that training, which is so great, is there's all of these de-escalation pieces that go in. And so what we actually sat down and did, and I think this is the first time we did this, is we looked at our GCN review, which is the de-escalation that all teachers take every year in the beginning of the year. And we reviewed that in the meeting. And then we had our safety care folks build on that and offer their ideas around how to build up with that with more specific strategies, help prompt weight, for instance, and kind of addressing these issues. One of the things that we did do in that meeting was we did collect data on the different, and I don't have that in front of me, but on the different referrals that we had from the behavior tracking pieces. And one of the things that we definitely saw was the big thing that was coming up was these power struggles. It was disruptions in class or like, authority issues. Those were the ones that teachers sort of were most concerned about when we were asking them, as well as the data. Whereas the safety pieces, where we're talking about physical aggression towards adults, or peers or threats, and those things were not as much as these other pieces that people were reporting on the tracking. We were able to do that. So that was, again, I think, talking about this idea about de-escalating. Folks are getting in earlier, identifying things earlier, so that things don't escalate up to that point where where we have, it does at some points, but not the same. I think we're slowing that down with the de-escalation. It's a great job, really, that folks are doing. And this is, we also, again, this is great work building in tiered behavior support. So thinking about this not just as like, oh, this is either a classroom issue or you have to have an administrator involved, but like rolling this into our tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions. So looking at this, for instance, going over fidelity for take a break spaces in the classroom, understanding that everyone understands that our students understand that, like being able to take that within, and then through the BST process and consultation, like moving through in terms of tiered interventions about when more support might be needed. But in that way, giving the proper amount of support for students and allowing them to learn about their behaviors, and then giving them the opportunity to learn how to regulate. This is our check-in, check-out, which I mentioned before. Tier 2, it's again Tier 2 intervention. And really it's broken down so that throughout the periods of the day, students are given feedback on how they're doing. We have this is built on our 3 positive behaviors that we look at, which is safe, responsible, and respectful, right? Those are our 3 that we have. And so we look at those and we start those out and we give feedback on those. And then for some students, we might define those much more specifically for them, what safe looks like them, what respectful or responsible might look for them as we go in the tiered piece. And then we also think about like, how are we giving them feedback? How are we supporting them? And a lot of this is how to do that positively. This is not a punitive piece. It's a way of looking at behavior, identifying it, saying, how are we going to collaborate together, you and I, in order thinking about how to move this forward, as opposed to being in this punitive piece of like, no, you can't do this now, you can't do that, because then what happens is then, right, we're not really, our students who might be struggling with some regulation stuff around this aren't really participating. And in our second step, which is our social emotional curriculum, and so that is at HES K through 5. All of our teachers are teaching that. Those basically all 4 at one time. And then on top of it all, what folks are starting to do is to integrate that into the projects and stuff that they're doing. So for instance, if we're talking about conflict with a friend, then some of the academic topics might be like centered on that, like talk about a time that you had a conflict with a friend, like what are some things that happened within that. So it's a way of backing this up. But again, this is happening on what turns out to be a weekly, what averages out to be a weekly basis. And then, right, we have high school students and middle school students are also having part of that instruction happen, and it's not so much through second step some, but also Cassell, which is another social emotional learning curriculum that we use for middle and older students, which is sort of more age appropriate. This is at Hatfield Elementary. This is the nest. And so we've identified a nest, a spot. It's like a calm room or a cool out space where students can go in terms of checking in, using their de-escalation and regulation skills. It also can be an alternative spot for learning spaces. So again, our students who may not be able to access the take a break in the classroom might go and then learn that in the smaller space. That's available to everyone if they need it. And then in addition, what we'll usually do around if there's a regulation issue is showing that students are ready to go back to class through like doing some academic work, making sure they're regulated, and then coming back and following up with that. And we're tracking these things as well.
So that's an example of one of the interventions that we had put in place earlier in the year that has had a pretty profound effect on student regulation and behaviors.
Yeah. I think that was this year, and it was kind of in place, and then it was really up and going like by, I'd say, early mid-October. And that's one of the places that we saw, I think, that we were in the terms of the data, like being able to help with that.
We know how frequently students are actually utilizing the Nest?
We have that data. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm kind of like going to look at.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we have students who actually, anytime they use it, they're actually signing in. So there is a complete log of the amount of time, both the student who enters, the adult who may be with them, and then the duration, the time that they're checking in and the time that they leave. So we have all of that data. And we're trying to look at doing that electronically as well. So kids could actually just click a button when they enter on an iPad. So we can easily track that as well.
So is there a staff member assigned to the Nest at any given time of day, or does the student have to like have their?
We have two,
Yes,
two
there's
members.
Two.
Okay.
Am I right that the Nest used to be part of the teachers, staff, or faculty room?
Yes.
So our staff willingly gave up their faculty space?
No,
for
it
this?
was previously a special education room. Before then it was, but then I got transferred into being a reading interventionist room. And then I got moved to being a special education room. And then we moved that position downstairs to the first floor. So that left that space
They left
empty.
it open.
And that was originally the place where we were going to put Jane Witzenbacher anyway, as the behaviorist. It just seemed like it made the most sense because it was a place that was big enough that it was a good sized space, but small enough that it wasn't such a huge classroom, because there's definitely things in there that
It
kids
fits
have
the
access
space
to.
well.
Yes, exactly.
We used it the other day for meetings. So.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
negotiations.
It used to be the teacher workroom. They had
Right.
copiers up there and supplies and other.
No, I was just thankful for them to give up some space for having this. I thought
Yes.
that was great.
And I wanted to say with the student, this is definitely, it's both a, if you will, like a reactive place in that if a student really needs a space in that minute, that's an option for them to go to. But it's also proactive in that like students who have, some students have scheduled breaks in terms of that, will go to that room or schedule check-ins with folks too. So it's a multi-use room. It's not just like someone can't be in class, so they're in there. That's like used in a lot of different ways, which is one of the reasons we have two staff there for, it's basically like one staff full day and then 4 hours for our second staff who's in there.
Correct.
And I don't know if you want to do DESA, I can do, you want to, yeah.
Oh, okay. So the DESA is new this year, and it's a computerized program in which the teachers are answering questions on each student, and then it gives a score, and that score then shows us whether or not we have students who are in need of additional support in the areas of self-management, self-regulation. And this right now, at least at the elementary school, we're looking to do this 3 times throughout the school year, fall, winter, and spring. We've had teachers do this in the fall. We're about ready to do the next one in winter after the break. But we've taken this data and we have now sent out a list. We have students in grades K through 5, in which we've identified students, approximately 20 in total, that were below the cutoff, which meant that they were eligible for some tier 2 instruction. So some small group with a peer model. And those letters have gone out so that we can start those groups after the break.
And likewise at Smith Academy, students or teachers of students have completed this as well. And we use this as a similar kind of tiered approach. So when students score at different, in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels, we can use that data to help support them in ways that work for them. So one of our goals is to set up kind of similar to what has been done at the elementary school, peer mentoring model, like a big sisters, big brothers kind of model, where we can have students who might excel in one capacity, work with students who might need a little development, specifically younger, maybe middle school students paired with like a high school role model. So this gives us similar to what we've done academically with literacy, with math. This gives us actionable data about social emotional competencies for our students, and really so teachers who see the same student as they're doing this, they kind of talk to each other about, are we all seeing this across the board, or is this a class specific thing, and really get into conversations about, well, okay, this is only happening in Mr. Driscoll's English class, so what's going on here that might be different? Is it instructional? Is it have to do with topics? Does the student just really not like to read? What's going on? It allows teachers to kind of distill a little further in that respect.
Right, we also, again, we continue to partner with River Valley Counseling Center, which has been terrific. As folks probably know, right, this is, they provide community-based therapy at school. So this is terrific in the way that it's accessible and convenient for our students. Familiar, they're easy to collaborate. They're literally the person's right next door to my office in the elementary school, and we can get quicker. There's early intervention, as well as quality, and then quality care. We have, we have mental health professionals, trained mental health professionals in our school settings, helping to support our students in that way. So it's been really successful. I know it's been both at the elementary school and at Smith Academy, and it's been a terrific resource. I know we're looking for some more. So we're working really well.
Yeah, and I will add up at Smith. One of the things that it didn't include here was similar kind of behavior data that we're tracking, and we've seen a similar trend with kind of declining severe behaviors that result in office referrals. One thing that we're seeing this year, and I don't know that it's more this year, but it feels big, is that we've seen kind of a number of students with more significant emotional needs that are arising in their lives, whether that be happening at school or at home and brought into school. We're not talking about like disruptive behaviors, but students that we have pretty significant concerns about with regard to their mental health. And so having this partnership allows us to pretty quickly identify those students and pair them up with outside counseling, because that's what this is. This is outside counseling that takes place during the school day. So the student doesn't have to, choose between sports practice and going to see a counselor. They don't have to find transportation after school to get there. This is kind of outside therapy sessions that occur in the school building at a time that works for the student. So it really allows us, when we have a student who, our responsibility for the student is certainly when they're at school. But if we have concerns about a student that go beyond the school day and their mental health and their mental well-being, we can pair them with a counselor, and they can meet during the school day to help meet those needs in a kind of more wrapped around way than we could do just operating as a school.
And
it's
they meet
been
year
really,
round.
yeah, and they meet year round, and it's been really, really beneficial for the students that need it, and their families, quite frankly.
And then this is something new, the Youth Awareness Solutions Squad. So this is something started at Smith Academy, and what this is a group of students that we're partnering again with Spiffy, and it really is an advocacy group in terms of looking at things. And one of the big projects that happened is they created a course feedback survey that teachers would administer, and they get course feedback for teachers in terms of classes and things like that. This is something that's like very specific for the teacher. It's only for the teacher. It's not something that has to do with any kind of evaluative process, but it's information. So there's a kind of a give and take in terms of between the students and teachers about talking about their classroom, teaching as well as like culture and what it feels like to be in your class. So it's sort of some, again, first round on doing this. Again, it's supported. This isn't made up. This is supported through Spiffy. So there's been a lot of evidence that suggests that this is evidence-based in terms of doing this and how to do this and what kind of questions. They're not just pointed at people, and like really gives a positive way in terms of feedback for around that collaboration. And again, finding our way for our students too to have a voice in their education, which is just great.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too that quite frankly, one of my concerns with this was, okay, we're collecting feedback from students. We can't have this be any kind of evaluative measure whatsoever. That would kind of go against the contract. So we worked with Spiffy and Yas and the teachers to kind of develop a way that it would be kind of kept confidential, but also compiled by someone or not the students, but by Spiffy outside of the school to give that feedback to the teachers. And it was optional. Teachers could choose to, they could choose to take part in it or not. And I think we had all teachers decide, hey, this would be great to get data on how how things are going from the perspective of students. And I think all teachers did it. So they get that feedback that goes specifically to them. It does not come through the office. We don't see it at all. And then it allows them to kind of make any changes that they might think would be beneficial to their students. The other thing that Yas did, I keep wanting to call them Spiffy. They're not Spiffy anymore. They're Yas. The other thing that Yas did that I thought was pretty neat was they polled students to kind of see what interests they had or they might have in additional courses. What courses that they'd like to see us offer. And this is something that we have done kind of yearly anyway. And we were able to take some of that input that they had as we looked to develop those Vermont State University partnership courses. And so we'll be able to offer courses that were kind of in high demand or high interest from our students through that partnership, which will be great.
All right, and this is our closing question here, which is, I think, where is it? If you pop it one more time, I think it's basically, what is the most consistent protective factor for a youth?
And I'm not going to accidentally hit it and
No.
give it away this time.
Anybody know? Protective meaning, like when we're talking about mental health, the most consistent, like when you look at all the research, there's one thing that always rises to the top as being the most consistent protective factor. Anyone want to take a guess? Okay.
I'm still interpreting that question.
Yeah.
You want to give us multiple choice?
Multiple choice. If I give
Give us a
multiple
couple.
choice, I'll give it. What do you think? A protective factor for a youth, right, might be like playing sports, right? And that could be like their access to community. It could be their friends group, right? All of those things, any of those things. Those are some examples.
I'll say family.
Very close.
School.
One trusted adult.
One.
One trusted adult. Doesn't have to be family. Doesn't have to be school-based. Can be community. One trusted adult. That resilience piece, it's amazing what it does for all the risk factors. And so I put that there because often sometimes like we talk about these things and it feels so overwhelming. It's like, what can I do? And I always offer like, just go look in the mirror. Because like you really are the answer to this, like taking a time to like develop a trusting relationship with one youth means tons to them. And it's just very, very clear. So that's my closeout for this. And then I think we just have questions. Oh, and I forgot the resource for that at the bottom, because I always do that, is Hatfield Public Schools. So that's our resource for one trusted adult.
Committee, I'm betting you have some questions.
I had one about the trauma-informed training you did at Smith Academy. Is it going to be done at the elementary school?
Yeah, we're looking, we have some, I think we were talking about doing it in the spring. I'm going to kind of flip some things too and do some of the trainings in the fall that was done at the elementary school. We're going to do up at Smith Academy. So I think we're talking about flipping those in the spring. It's just a matter of we don't have enough training days.
And then how do we assist and inform new staff that we get with the trauma-informed training or with restraint or de-escalation? This year, this collective staff is getting this training, but if we get new staff members next year, how are they going to get on board with that information?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that we've talked about as a admin team, as well as with our schools, when it comes to professional development, is getting into kind of a cycle of PD that makes sure that teachers get, because this training, it also satisfies the PDP requirements, that DESE sets for relationship. And so as we do this, part of the goal is to make sure that we're doing this in a kind of a cyclical way that comes back, so that after 5 years go by, staff have their 15 PDPs in each area that they need, and that need is identified kind of by staff every year. Like, okay, this year, we're looking at the high school, for example, ELL training. So students for whom English may not be their first language. That was seen as kind of a need, and so that's happening this year, and it will happen, again in a couple of years. With something like trauma-informed teaching, that's done. It's not like we're doing it once and then we'll do it again in 5 years to, just satisfy that rotation. It's more ongoing, and it may be something that, rather than spending 1 year getting your 15 PDPs in ELL training, you may spend, you might get over the course of 5 years, you may do 3 hours every year with that, so that it's more, it comes back quicker in it.
Better learning
Yeah.
process.
Yep.
Does the
And
PD tracker track all that stuff?
it does. And the other piece is that, when we have a more acute need that's identified, we have those full day sessions, or we can kind of cater what we offer on some of those sessions to teachers who may be, for whom that might be a real more urgent need.
Just adding, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to add about the trauma form stuff, is at the bottom of one of those is, it's the Massachusetts, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting but it's the trauma-informed website on Massachusetts specific. And what that has actually built in there is it's got two books on trauma-informed care, and it has lessons that are broken down as small as like 15-minute videos that then are broken down in discussion. So it lends itself to both to adding to these briefer or smaller moments that we have for staff training on these things, I think that are really important. The thing I wanted to say too, I know one of the things just in terms that we heard at the elementary school is we figured we would do the de-escalation booster training in January, halfway through the year. And the feedback we got was, it's great. Can we do it earlier in the year? Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, great. Of course. Yes. Like maybe do it 2 or 3 months in, and then look to, again, hearing from teachers what they're hoping for and what's effective for them, as we're trying to kind of figure out, like, having these discussions and not wanting to overwhelm folks, but also be like, we want to provide support. So sorry, I wanted to just answer those pieces. If that's
actually
helpful.
totally fine. You kind of answered my question. I was mostly, the whole first part of the presentation was about these different trainings, and my question was going to be about the feedback or data we've gathered on the trainings and how we are knowing that they were successful or well received. But it sounds like people liked it.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question though about new hires, new staff. Is there some mechanism that you check with them on trainings that they have done, or how do you know a new hire would need this trauma training or the de-escalation or the restraint training?
Yeah, and that's a fair question. And truthfully, right now, we do not have a good mechanism for that. Even if someone comes into the district with a wealth of knowledge and a background in some of this stuff, the goal would be to have them kind of on the same page as the rest of the staff too. So it's possible that someone may come in with having done some kind of trauma-informed training that might be slightly different than what we offer. And we want to be able to make sure that we offer our own training and our own onboarding to them, so that they're using the same language, that a student's going to have the same experience when they go from one class to another, even if that person has had that training. So that gets to a couple of things. That gets to our onboarding process during the school year. So okay, when someone joins our team, are we front loading some training for them? Are we, if there's a mid-year vacancy and someone comes in, we want them to kind of hit the ground running and get started. But the risk in doing that is getting started and going, quickly without having that kind of baseline. The flip side of that is, of course, that the training's kind of, if someone's here for a decade, the trainings compile over time, and so you're not going to get a decade worth of PD in the first 2 weeks that someone's on the job. So really, it involves kind of trying to prioritize what we feel is most important, identifying the time that is going to be able to get that new hire up to speed or as close to up to speed as possible in a short time. And the other piece then is and this is something we've been looking at and working on, is for teachers and staff who are hired over the summer for the following year, having some kind of orientation that includes parts of this training and this work, so that they really are ready on day one to start the job with at least kind of a baseline understanding of what we do, why we do it, and how we do it here.
Thank you.
So this is kind of a silly question following on to this. The materials that are available to pull through when you want to go find it, you as opposed to what we're pushing out, whether they're physical or digital, do all those things live in a shared space? So if you had somebody who was going to go look for it, they would know where to go, and it would all there's a theoretical
Could I
bookshelf.
say, I think, again, right, aspirations, I think what are a big aspiration, like we looked around today, we looked around this year and we went, okay, we have all these analog ways of collecting data. How can we start moving to more digital ways? So that's some of the things that we were looking at doing, like creating Google Forms, for instance, instead of just paper forms, getting this check-in, check-out data, for instance. And so I think we've noticed that and we're trying to move towards that. But for example, the check-in, check-out data is I think it's almost or on the cusp of being completely available for the entire school system. So in other words, all of that we'd be able to get data for everybody on that. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do aspirationally.
I think I was even just thinking about the training materials themselves.
Yeah.
So that if we've paid for or given a training that we own, that we might come back around to, that those materials are together and available. So it doesn't walk away if somebody leaves the district, or there's ways that people can find all of that. Is that?
I know at Smith Academy we have a shared drive folder. It's not a drive, it's a folder. It's a shared folder, and within that folder we have different subfolders of trainings, past trainings, that kind of thing. So we have those materials there. I truthfully don't know how often they're accessed, but I'm happy to point people that direction if the occasion arises.
Together if they want it. So. Other thoughts? I guess I just want to share that I'm reflecting a lot tonight, hearing all of this back many years. I spent part of today looking at some materials. I was looking for budget stuff, I will confess, and I went back into stuff that came out of 2020, and I can't help but sit here tonight and look back at the conversations Becca and I were part of a few years back, and how much we were like, we really need to talk about SEL. And in the massive shift and the growth that the district has put towards this is really impressive. And so we're always going to look for more we can do. And I appreciate that too. But it also, I can't help but feel like, wow, we've come a long way, baby. It's just like, this is a big step forward. And I think the data Melissa shared at the beginning is reflective of the work. So thank you all for that. I appreciate it. Because it's
I agree. I'll just co-sign what you just said. This is
really
this is great.
Huge shift forward.
In the right direction.
Absolutely. So thank you. And Dr. Bill, if you wanted to leave, we would understand. You don't have to sit through the whole meeting.
That would be okay.
We're really fun though.
Oh, no,
I'm just kidding.
We didn't even bring snacks or anything.
The laryngitis that I had the last week, I unfortunately gave to the rest of my family. So if I was able to go home, that might alleviate some of the guilt that I'm feeling about that.
Does the little baby have a little raspy crack?
Oh, it's bad. Yes.
Oh,
It's
we
so
appreciate your
raspy.
coming.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
tonight.
Thank you so much.
Bill.
Appreciate it.
Take care, Will. Thanks.
Okay. So it's 8:30. I just want to check in with the committee. There's some very insightful reports that have come in. I think we might want to we probably have some questions for admin reports this evening. Can we take some highlights and some questions?
I just have a broad question of how are we doing on school choice and preschool applications for.
So school choice, we have 15 now, 15 applications, and we have our lottery coming up on Friday if we need it. And do you know how many we have?
I don't
for
have,
school?
I don't know, I don't have a number offhand, but I do know that we have been compiling them, and I know that this Friday is the deadline, so I can definitely send something out tomorrow, just as a quick friendly reminder. I keep seeing Heather Blyder come in every day and like put another
Yep.
one on of the
Yeah.
current preschool, so we know exactly who is still coming back from next year, but we have been, I haven't had a chance to ask Michelle what an up-to-date number
Are
is.
you saying 15 for Smith Academy? Or
15 district-wide,
District-wide.
kindergarten through 12th grade. Yeah,
Okay.
not
Pre-K.
for preschool.
That's students.
But understanding that preschool piece is really key right now. And
Yeah.
if you can help them, gently remind them
Yeah.
that whether we have one pre-K class or two pre-K classes,
Right. Yes.
that
We'd really like to have two.
it would be lovely.
Yes.
Mhm.
But we've got to have the tuition to support that.
I was wondering if Dr. Driscoll, if you've established kind of like in your mind, where would be the cutoff between having one large preschool class or two classes and like, where would it end up where like, okay, we're just going to go for one and we'll have a lottery for the one and we have 25 applicants, which doesn't quite support two. Do you know where your numbers are?
Yeah, and
It would change depending on how many were tuitioned, wouldn't it?
well, yes and no. If we had, I mean, it would really, you have to have as many students who are preschool students who are not on IEPs as you do who are on IEPs. You want to have above a 50% ratio. So the cutoff would be tuition based for financial cutoff, but I think it was I want to say it was 24 students, full-time equivalent students, so 12 in each class would be at least a break-even point
For two classes.
for two classes. Yeah. Um, okay. It was 14. You're right. Thank you.
28.
Yeah. So it would be 28
28, not
total.
24.
But depending on the number of kids that were applying that had IEP, like there is,
Right.
Yeah.
that's the part where it starts to become specific to
Right.
the needs of your class.
Yeah, and so if you had 28 students who applied and 14 of them were on IEPs because that's the 50-50 ratio, we wouldn't be talking about a break-even point then with 50% not paying tuition, but we would be required to have that
Correct.
number.
But we might break even if we had a lower number of
Yes,
IEPs. So there's a
absolutely.
little,
Yeah.
so that
And
may be the 12.
And it also depends on how many, what sometimes students are there Tuesday, Thursday versus Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we're talking full-time, full-time equivalents. So either one student Monday through Friday or one student Tuesday, Thursday, another one Monday, Wednesday, Friday combined to make one full-time.
And I suspect the school finance subcommittee would take a look at those numbers. And there's a point at which like 12 versus 14,
Right.
You
And-
give a little.
And we
What's there?
we want to be careful when we're getting, because the law is around preschool it gets a little tricky. So if you have fewer than 5 students on IEPs, you can have up to 20 students in one classroom with a teacher and an aide. If you go between 5 and 7 students, then suddenly that drops to 15. The cap is at 15 with one student and one aide. And that can change throughout the year. So, if you start the year with 5 students, all of a sudden you have a student move into the district or become eligible for an IEP, then all of a sudden you're above that ratio, and you have to figure out how to finagle that. So it's it's preschool itself is more nuanced in that than any other grade level by far. In addition, you also have three age groups that are going into preschool. Three kind of what we would call grade spans going into it.
Other questions? I just want to clarify, is the district posted any new jobs lately?
Yes, we posted last week. So we had a really great meeting with our special ed department and teachers. And this follows up from John's presentation about some of the challenges we've been experiencing in special ed. And it's become clear that we need some more support at the elementary level for special ed. At this point, we're not able to support that from Smith Academy by sharing staff because we did reduce one special ed teacher at Smith Academy last year. So we did make the decision to post an additional special ed position at the elementary school. As of 4:30 this afternoon, we had no applicants yet, but we did just post it on Friday. So we'll keep pushing it and reposting it.
It's a half-time position?
We posted it as a full-time position
Okay.
to try to get as many applicants as we could. Figured we would get more by doing that. But it's a position that as we get towards the end of the year and we look at needs for next year, we'll be looking at if we're going to keep it or we're not going to keep that position because with the changing needs at the elementary school and bringing 6th grade up to Smith Academy, we'll have to just kind of reassess.
So it's just a temporary position.
Right now,
For
it's
now.
for this school year, correct? Through the rest of the school year.
Other questions for administration? Did you have something earlier?
I did. Thank you. Totally forgot. Melissa, the 8-week classes that
Yes.
are going to happen. Am I remembering something about kids that are in aftercare participating in that and the fees, or I'm not sure what I remember, because as it stands now, to do those classes costs
$40.
$40. And so if a student in aftercare wanted to do one of these classes, are they paying, the parents paying an additional $40
No, they
for
are
it?
not. So the only time a parent is paying for it, if their child goes to aftercare, is that the course offering is on an afternoon that they aren't already attending.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're not asking
deal.
parents to double dip or double pay. That doesn't make sense. We didn't do that last year either.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to clarify, and in case any parents were wondering about that.
Yes,
So
and I did share that with, and
Bonus.
talked with Julie Landeville about that as well, in case she fielded any questions from parents as well.
Awesome.
thanks.
Then students after that are, if they don't have aftercare, they just leave. Like there's no bus
Correct.
or any. They
Right.
either have to be picked up or
Correct.
their
There
bike
needs to be
Ride the-
arrangements made for a pickup.
that's my
correct.
plan.
Yeah.
Ride their bucks home or
Yeah.
walk.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The iReady learning walk, so this is just a representative from iReady just coming in, making sure the teachers are comfortable with the software and everything.
Correct. They spent the entire day and our reading interventionist went with them. So they went into classrooms, and then once the classroom observation kind of like hang out in the teacher's space was done, there was set up 15 to 20-minute debriefs afterwards in which the person was like, hey, I noticed this is what you were doing and this was all great and wonderful. And oh, by the way, any kind of specific questions for me, let's take a look at your data. They were there as a resource. I was not present, so that teachers would not feel like it was evaluative and therefore would be free in making sure they were honest with either things that they were struggling with or areas in which they were looking to get some more support. That's part of the fee for the purchasing of the iReady program. They offer professional development, and I definitely, at this point, I was already using something for fall, and then again, they don't offer something that's just half days. So I just felt like a full day of having someone just come in and setting it up in this way, where they could do learning walks and debriefs, made the most sense to ensure that staff actually were able to participate.
How was the feedback from staff? Did they appreciate it?
Yeah,
It
I
worked?
believe so.
It's
Yeah,
helpful?
I mean, it's definitely, that's one of the things that we had spoken about at one of our PLCs was that, they were coming. What are some of your biggest questions, concerns, beefs with the program? A lot of staff had shared with me that I was hoping they would share with the consultant was the things that they're covering in the day-to-day lessons doesn't always reflective in the assessment, and that is a huge disconnect to them. They're like, I don't understand why I spend all of my time teaching this, and then the question of the assessment has nothing to do with what I've been teaching. That it makes no sense to me. I'm like, well, that's a great question to ask the consultant when they come in. So those were definitely areas that I had shared that I would, wanted him to talk with them about. But again, I wasn't part of those other than they did
Get it.
participate, and I'm hoping they found it to be valuable because it was definitely an opportunity for them to get questions answered, particularly when it came to our upper grades teachers sharing that the typical growth, I mean, usually a lot of our kids who come in the green or blue don't travel much. They just stay exactly where they're at. So the bigger question is why? Why are we not getting, if nothing else, you would figure that the students who seem to be most capable in math should be the ones hitting their typical growth score. Why are they not? They just seem to plateau. They'll make a little bit of gains, but they don't make that expected typical growth gain. So we had conversations around whether or not we need to do more enrichment with those students and really kind of push them in small group rather than always looking at trying to kind of like fill the hole, fill the gap, fill in for other students. So,
I'm glad to hear that's happening.
oh yeah, which is part of the reason why Mr. Wenner's offering a math club.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I have a question for Dr. S.
Please.
Dr. S,
Yes,
it says you had a CPAC meeting.
Yeah.
we did.
Would you like to elaborate?
It was a virtual meeting. We actually have a membership to MassPAC. And MassPAC actually through the Federation offers different virtual trainings. So we have what we're supposed to do every year is a basic rights training. And because we don't actually have an organized CPAC, I have applied for a waiver to the state. But one of the things we have to do if we don't have an organized CPAC is to provide like 3 different trainings. So this would be number 1 out of 3.
Okay. Was it attended?
It was attended by 3 adults and myself.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and then we did talk about, I took the opportunity before things got started and at the end of it to try to encourage folks to let me know if there was any interest in folks organizing our own CPAC. And I actually did follow up with CES just to talk to them. I could not make it to the advisory meeting, but I did ask them to put on the agenda if there was any interest in putting together a regional CPAC group.
I gotta believe that'd be a good idea.
I think the question was some legalities about it.
Yeah. I hear that. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, we're going to turn on to the fun conversation of school finance subcommittee report. Mr. Sullivan.
Okay. So starting with the fun, lighthearted stuff, Dr. Driscoll informed us that esports will be starting in the spring,
Woohoo.
and it's budget neutral. So we like that. And it's going to have Mario Kart. So I just highlighted that. I looked up what Google thinks are the best current Mario Kart drivers, and it says that Yoshi and Wario are the best. But I tend to use Tanuki Mario or Kamek. We discussed facilities costs. We have almost fully spent our entire facilities repair budget for the year. The numbers are there in your report. But we had budgeted $50,000 and we're pretty much there. Hoping to have fewer HVAC issues because Dr. Driscoll's knocking on wood. He got our 2 HVAC repair partners, we'll call them, there together to try to coordinate things working together between
love the
software
term.
and mechanics.
Mhm.
So hopefully, actually, Ms. Petra, our rooms, our temperature is better balanced at the school.
I can say I at least have heat in the office area, so people aren't walking in freezing anymore.
Our
Yes,
rooms,
it was so nice to have them all playing nice in the sandbox together.
Oh, wow.
our classroom's not 90 degrees anymore.
I can't say that that's not true on the second floor. That's quite warm. However, at least areas in the building that were not receiving heat are actually getting heat.
Okay.
I think there's still some work to be done with trying to better temper the second floor so it's not as warm. But at least the places that are now, we're complaining of being frigid are no longer frigid. So that's exciting.
Still more costly repairs coming though, even though we spent most of our budget, but the entranceway at the elementary school, if you have possibly noticed, is in need of repair. It's being supported right now, but it will be fixed over winter break. Still on schedule for that?
Believe so.
Okay.
I'm expecting to hear back this week.
Okay.
To confirm.
And the elementary gym doors will be fixed, hopefully over winter break, but maybe spring break. We're looking at spring break.
It's the doors are not in yet.
Okay,
So
spring break.
I got an update today about that. That they the new vendor, because what happened, the doors, they were ordered, they never came from the vendor, so the contractor canceled that order, got the refund, and ordered them from a new vendor. He said they're about 4 weeks out.
There's a business opportunity in the door business,
Wow.
Right.
clearly.
That's amazing.
We touched
That
on
project
this.
is paid for though.
Okay.
The door project is paid for, so
The labor and the parts.
yes, so that will be a budget neutral
Okay.
project.
We touched on this last month, but just kind of following up that we are going to probably at our next meeting have an update to our FY25 budget because we're spending more than we had budgeted for out of school choice funds. Reasons for those overages primarily due to increased costs in student services and the unbudgeted tech costs that we missed in our budget. And then the additional posting for the special ed teacher at the elementary school that I noted there as a half-time, but apparently it is a full-time now.
I think that's my fault.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I had it in there as a half as well.
Well, we talked about it as a half.
Yeah.
And a full.
And the additional ESP or para increases that we identified over the summer last year after we had already made the budget. Going into next year, Dr. Driscoll and I met with town finance, and he presented our budget draft for next year, and we discussed our capital requests. We have asked the town for an additional 2.5% increase in their funding to our budget. And our presentation to the capital committee hasn't happened yet, but it looks like the finance committee is amenable to our requests. So just highlighting those, we are asking for a new roof for the elementary school, which the town kind of approved last year, but that was contingent upon the solar from the state, which we ended up being ineligible for. So we'll have to go again and do it all on our own. And the 2 boilers for the elementary school and parking lots at both schools might actually make it to town meeting this year, which would be exciting.
Just don't hold your breath on all
I'm
that.
not.
But
The
just-
parking
Do you know
lots.
how long the parking lots have
So
been on our
long.
capital?
I'm assuming that
plan?
the
So
parking lots
before
at the
you
high
were on
school
the
are about
committee?
42 years old. So
At least 20
safe bet.
years.
Wow.
The parking lots have been on that
Yeah.
list.
I want you to
Just
say they were
academy.
on there before you started the committee, because that would really speak to,
Well,
it's been a while.
that sink at the dent in the back of the elementary school when you make that UE coming around the back, that is tough. Other budget considerations for next year, considering putting the Smith Academy band teacher back to full-time when 6th grade moves up. Student services is where most of our cost increases have been over the last couple of years and for next year as well. So while Dr. Driscoll's looking at adding a full-time SPED teacher for the remainder of this year, we would like to try to budget that for next year as well. We have significant out-of-district tuition costs. We're budgeting $340,000, which represents kind of worst-case scenario. We haven't quite determined where all of the students will shake out and what the costs will be. But that's our worst estimate for what those costs will be. But bear in mind, anything over $50,000, circuit breaker kicks in. So we get 75% back after that. But we have to kind of budget for the full thing up front. And then just a note there on showing how much circuit breaker has increased for our town over the last several fiscal years. So in FY20, we were at just about $23,000 in circuit breaker reimbursements. Last year, we were at $105,000. That's a reflection of just how much we're spending on student services, on out-of-district, on transportation, on the whole load, and it continues to grow.
And the student service costs are clearly, it's not just Hatfield by any stretch. So there's a lot of conversation across the state with school committees looking at those costs. I know that Walpole put out a survey that I responded to. And so because of the survey, it kind of forced me to do some of the math. The costs between what we spent on student services in 2023, fiscal 23, and what we're projecting to 26 is up 54%. And we have 15% fewer IEPs. So the cost per service that continues to rise. on the upside, that circuit breaker reimbursement rate finally got over 6% of our student service needs, because back in pre-pandemic era, it was less than 2% of reimbursement for our budget. So small steps forward. But next year, we're anticipating that student services will be about 30% of our budget, which is high. It's historically been closer to like 22, 23% of the budget. So just it's the needs that are. So when we look at what's driving our budget increase, it's the needs that we have. So questions to school finance?
Thanks for crunching the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Glad it's you, not me.
We're having fun. So I keep telling Adam. So with that, we know that there is not a report from this policy subcommittee because you guys didn't get to meet in your meeting soon in March, but we did schedule a conversation to talk about policy JEB, the entrance age, as we've had a request for an exemption to our policy. And so there's an opportunity for the committee to discuss that tonight.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
Are we talking about an exemption? Because I heard her say she wanted an expansion of the policy to change.
I think if the committee would like the policy to change, the committee could have that conversation tonight. And my take as chair would be to redirect that back into the policy subcommittee. So if the committee said tonight, we want to reevaluate this policy, then we could take that vote and then we could have that would then direct it back into the subcommittee, who could then have discussions and bring it back. I'm not entertaining changing the policy in tonight's meeting. That would be inappropriate because it wouldn't give the subcommittee an opportunity to do their job. There is an avenue for anytime we exempt someone from a policy, it would have to come to the full committee for a vote. We experienced this on an unrelated subject a few months back. It would require someone from the committee to make a motion to have an exemption. It would need to be seconded. We would have a conversation and then there would be a vote. And so that is a possibility for tonight as well. Before we would do that, in there, part of the conversation after it was on the table, I think we would hear from administrators who have, I believe, on multiple levels have spoken to the family and to the teacher who's had a chance to share how things are going. Currently, everything is completely above board and following the policy as I understand it. So there is an opportunity in preschool for students who have clear needs and have an IEP that they may start when they turn 3. And it is a policy, as I understand it, and I'll look to the policy subcommittee to nod along or correct me, but as I understand it, we have that in our policy because students with needs sometimes need more time in that sort of, I think of it as like golden sunlight in pre-K. It's a beautiful space. And it's a great opportunity that they get to develop those skills. And so kids who need a little bit more help have more time. So we have allowed for an avenue for them to have that time by starting when they turn 3. That is the only place where kids get to come in early. Otherwise, there's a really strict cutoff date. And then the policy for preschool is they have to be 5 years old by the 31st of August.
Kindergarten.
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 Excuse me, yes, for kindergarten, they have to be 5. So there is this little exception for some students who would, by those 2 definitions, spend more time in pre-K. But I think that was by design, it's a feature, not a bug.
So did this student start at 3?
So any student that would be, I guess I don't want to get too specific about any particular
Okay.
student, but I would say if a student was spending more than 2 years, they started when they
When they
turned
were 3. Okay, okay.
Anyone that would occur to, that would have been the
Okay.
case.
And I thank you for jumping in to make sure that as we're having this conversation in open meeting that, we heard from one parent of a student, but we really need to make sure that we're not identifying students during our conversation,
Yep.
or needs of any particular students or families.
Okay.
So I can tell you, as part of the policy subcommittee this weekend, I did a little homework and checked all our neighboring districts and what their entrance age policy is to see if, anything was different. I looked at Frontier Regional, which has 5 elementary schools, and then an additional 4. And half of them had the date September 1st, and the rest had August 31st, that a student must be 5 years old by. And in some cases in their policy, must was capitalized. And some policies said no exceptions. So I just wanted to see if other districts had different dates than we did.
There's a couple of districts, I'm just scrolling through the list right now on DESI, that there's still a couple of December 31st out there, but like 3.
But
and
not
certainly nothing
anywhere
local.
us.
Yeah, no. Brockton and stuff.
Yeah.
So none of the other policies that you guys reviewed when establishing our policy really provided words for wiggle room. It was like, this is the date, not like, here's the date, but here's the avenue for getting around the date.
Well, when we
When we
reviewed
wrote it.
this, we also got direct input from administration
Mhm.
and from student services,
Yeah.
who,
And we did look at a lot of comparative districts. I will say that, yeah, that is what occurred.
there was, from the administrative side, a strong desire to have kids all starting on the same age for cycles
Mhm.
going forward.
And there was some parent input that they wanted the chance for kids to start at 3.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where we kind of found a path
Mhm.
that spoke to kids who were 3 only if they had a plan
Right.
and otherwise waited.
You're speaking about the pre-K
The
policy.
pre-K
Yeah.
policy, not
Well,
the kindergarten.
Yeah, I was
But we
gonna
kind of looked
say-
at some of that in
It
concert.
really, they were revised together, and I will say that the major revisions and clarifications occurred to the preschool policy. And the fact that when you pull up, the kindergarten entrance age policy, that was updated, and to the best of all my recollection, we only changed it because previously it stated that you had to be 5 by the first day of school of kindergarten, which is like a different day every year, and that felt weird. So we made it August 31st to align with the same age of the preschool policy. But you can see it was revised, and the substance was simply clarified.
Is there like wiggle room in our policy? So, like,
Historically, no, and I'll ask, to
Mhm.
the best of your collective knowledge, have we made exceptions to this in past?
No, partly because, again, there's a hard and fast date for a reason. And it's challenging and it's tricky when you have a birthday that falls past that, but everybody understands, because when they go on and they see the policy, they understand and know that that's the expectation. For the most part, it's not been something that I have had many families come to me and state a case or make a plea, which is why when this particular case came forward, I said, this is out of my hands. This is already a
A policy.
policy. Therefore, I'm not going against what the policy states.
I fear if we made exceptions or allowed for wiggle room, where does it end?
Right.
You start with somebody okay, my kiddo has a September birthday, and if that had been an exception, what's to say somebody after that then comes and say, well, my kid's birthday is October 1st. You know, well,
Yeah,
you
you go,
did it-
oh,
you
it's only
did-
2 more weeks. So then
Right,
it's like, oh, it's another 2 weeks. And
Right, you're gonna constantly have somebody say, well, you did it for them, and mine is only this far away from that. And I think it's easier to have a date and stick to it.
Mm.
You can't get your license before you're 16 and a half. Can't vote before you're 18. Like there are deadlines for things, and
And it's not just about kindergarten. It's that development stages happen all the way along their educational path, right? So it's right now it's kindergarten readiness, but then it's like first grade readiness, or what about ready to go to Smith Academy at 6th grade? Like all these little things, all these little milestones are, there's a reason why we set an age. Like it just keeps all the way through. And I'm sympathetic to families who want to be ready. So I don't diminish that, or having connections and making good friendships. Like I think that's fantastic. But also preschool is wonderful in that you have kids that stay and kids that go every year because there's always a couple ages. I'm not hearing the committee make a motion. Is there anyone who wants to give any voice to?
I mean, unless we vote for the policy to be reviewed to change the date, we can't make any
or make a motion for an
case by
exemption.
case.
You can make a committee member can make a motion to make an exemption, a specific exemption to the policy. I have never been involved with the committee when that's happened. I cannot think of an example where we have chosen that route, but that does not prohibit us from making that choice.
Would an exemption be for for the general public or for a case by case basis?
I believe an exemption would have to be case by case to be an exemption. And it
otherwise
would
you're
take
changing the policy.
otherwise it's changing the policy. In which case, if it's changing the policy, it goes back to the policy subcommittee. I know it's messy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify because
Yeah.
if we do, because I am sympathetic. I have a kid who, like started kindergarten because their birthday is November. So I can see where we need to be sympathetic, but I don't know the entire picture. So
I have
I
a
don't wanna
question
make
to
a
administration
decision.
that might set us up in a different way.
Yeah.
Thinking through policies, there is an opportunity for a student who was found to be advanced and needing to move forward, that there is a path for that, correct?
Yeah.
And I shared that information also, that down the road, first grade, that could potentially be a conversation we could have if we felt that the teacher and data was showing that a student was emotionally ready as well as academically ready. We have made that move. I've made that move already and said that that could potentially be an option. But until that such time as that is showing to be the case, our policy is such that
What you're saying is in JEB, entrance age. Number one is children entering kindergarten must be 5 years old by August 31st of the year they are enrolling.
Yep.
And number two is initial admission of children to the first grade or other grades will involve a consideration of both chronological age and the readiness of the children to do the work of those grades. So that's exactly what you're saying, right?
There's
yes,
an opportunity for
Mhm.
the principal, because I believe it sits
Yeah,
with the principal,
does.
yes.
to advance a student should they get there and shown that they are ready.
Correct. So when we're having data meetings in the fall and we're looking at data and we have looked at a student who is heads and tails showing evidence that their DIBELS and their DRA and everything else is way higher than everybody else, and then we're almost looking at wanting to put them into a different group in a different grade because that's what they're ready for, we then start thinking, is this student globally then? Is it not just ELA? Is it math as well? Because if a student is globally ready for all of those academic pieces and they're emotionally ready, we piloted a student, we kind of pushed them into a class, tried them for a little bit, had that conversation with the parents who were like, we're not really 100% sure that this is okay, but let's give it a go. We'll try it for a couple of weeks. And then the kid went home and was like, love it. This is fantastic. I'm having the best time. And it was like, I think the movement makes sense. And we did. And we made that move halfway through the year based on data, based on staff input, and the student piloting that opportunity. So there is an opportunity for that if the student is truly ready. So
Okay,
And-
that makes
that was
sense.
shared with the
I
family as
appreciate
well
that.
at that meeting.
And I will add just, for what it's worth for the community, the research is very clear um, about age in entrance, and it really supports old, students, kind of as old as they can, starting in kindergarten, being set up as, for success. That's one of many factors, but a really significant factor in student achievement has correlated with when how old they are when they enter kindergarten. And it really has supported that students who are older going into kindergarten tend to achieve more, at least at the initial grade levels before it evens out. Which makes sense. I mean, if you think of it, you have someone 5 years old versus, uh, that one year is 20% of their life. So that at that point, that's a lot of different development, both physical and mental development.
Thank you.
I read up on districts who have who struggle because so many parents want to redshirt their kids, so they are the oldest ones going into kindergarten. They hold them. So that's interesting.
And just like in my son's class, there's one student who is either September 1st or September 2nd. So he's the oldest kid. And then we have kids who are born in August. So there's like a full year basically of difference. And you can notice, you can see the developmental difference, in preschool and kindergarten, first grade, and now second grade. It's
Growing up, two of my best friends, one was the start of September and one was the end of August. And all the way through elementary school, there was this gap, and it was probably high school by the time, I won't name names if Daryl's watching in Arizona, that he finally kind of caught up. But, those of us with September birthdays were driving ahead of everybody. There was a lot of benefit to being oldest.
I was the September baby because that was before there was a deadline.
Oh,
So there were people there, over a year older than me in my class. But
look what happened.
I know, right?
Okay, I'm at one last chance. Okay, so the policy will stay. We have an opportunity tonight to make a recommendation for a member to join the Hatfield 2040 Implementation Committee. So you remember we did the 2040 committee, which Becca served on as the representative, and that committee has finished their work. They've made their report, and now they're looking to form a new committee to talk about and oversee implementation of that work, which is designed to be some people coming back and some new faces. And with the approval of the committee, I would like to see if Ms. Bench would be willing to serve again. Steward on. Thank you, thank you.
As she
Is there a
shakes her head.
motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
To appoint Ms. Bench.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Was that a 5-0?
Sure.
Okay.
I was like, I kind of just abstain, but
It looks bad in the minutes if you abstain on that one.
I
Do
no,
you
I'm.
need a vote on subcommittee assignments? Or you just wanted that?
It's actually in our policy that we
It-
vote.
It is.
And
on
this is not a
appointment.
subcommittee, it's an appointment.
It's appointment.
Representative appointment.
But we have to name somebody that then gets
Yeah.
approved. So I'm just
And
making it
I
official.
will say that I very much enjoyed our work on the 2040 committee, so I'm happy to continue
I'm glad that they're
as our representative.
watching implementation because otherwise it's just a plan, right?
I'm glad
Yeah.
we have representation on that
Yes.
committee, so thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got you.
Okay. Also tonight for a vote, Mr. Driscoll, Dr. Driscoll, would you like to talk about the trip to New York City?
Sure. If I may, before we do that, and I apologize if this is out of line, but I realize that the last couple of items on our agenda are a Smith Academy related field trip in my mid-year report. Recognizing that Dr. Salvaros has a long drive, and Ms. Peter has an early morning. I'm wondering if we might be
Absolutely.
okay with the rest of our admin team.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
So we're fine.
And thank you for being here for the preschool discussion.
Just kidding.
Love it.
It's totally real quick.
I should.
Of course, it's fun.
Maybe.
Is that right here? The white one. Thank you.
We don't like this. Extension cords and extension cords.
Right. Thank you.
Okay,
Pass out.
so I have these for everyone. This is the kind of finalized itinerary for the trip.
The last piece is yours.
Oh,
To see.
thank you. That's right. See.
Luxury.
Oh, these are going to be
There-
some
oh,
busy
did you-
kids.
Yeah, so this is a,
Yeah, I have an extra one here.
No, somebody was.
so as you can see, this is a full-on packed itinerary for a field trip. We start at 7 o'clock in the morning. We meet all the students, get everyone together, make sure everyone's here, hop on a bus and drive to New York City. So at 11:30, that's the projected kind of arrival time. So we give ourselves a good cushion there to get down. We stop at the Museum of Broadway. Take care. Have a good night. And we spend some time there. Then we have a little bit of time for lunch. So the two lunch days, those are times where students will be with their groups, going to different areas, finding lunch. There's plenty of places to eat there. And after lunch at 3:30, we visit Rise New York, which is these are all kind of in the same area, the same general area. Rise New York is what I understand is kind of an immersive ride experience where it's like a 3D ride where you fly through New York. Following that, we will head to Bubba Gump to eat dinner together as a big group. That's included with the cost of the trip. And after that, we will head to see Anne Juliet, and that is at the Stephen Sondheim Theater on Broadway. Following that, in the evening, we'll head back to Lyndhurst, New Jersey, at the Courtyard by Marriott, and we'll have security at the Marriott with keeping an eye on the hallways and stuff for the duration. At 7:30, we wake them up. We get breakfast at the hotel. That's included within the cost, and then we depart for the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. So all the ferry costs are included. So the bus will drive us down to, I believe it's Battery Park, Liberty Park. So and then we'll take that out to Ellis Island. We'll stop at Ellis Island, and then when we finish that, we'll take the ferry from Ellis Island to the Statue of Liberty. We did not get into the crown of the Statue of Liberty, so we're not going to be able to climb up inside, unfortunately. But we will have time at the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Following the Statue of Liberty visit, we will, during that time, we'll have time for lunch. There's plenty of places to eat at both islands. And following that, we will head over to Battery Park, and we'll walk from Battery Park to the 9/11 Memorial, which is a short walk. It's not very far away. From that point, after we go to the 9/11 Memorial, we will, in museum, we're heading to the One World Observatory. So that's One World Trade Center. It's an observatory at the top of the skyscraper with the kind of panoramas around the city. Following that, at 6 o'clock, we head down and we meet our coach bus, and everyone falls asleep on the way home because they're going to be exhausted.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And there will be a stop on the way home at the Ardsley Travel Plaza. That'll be like a rest area for dinner if students are hungry.
So how many meals are not included with the,
Two lunches in the rest area stop.
okay, so 3 meals.
So are
Any-
kids supposed to bring money with them so they can?
Yes, yeah. We'll have a recommended amount. I think it's going to be like $20 or $25.
Okay.
For each meal or?
No, total. Because the places that maybe $30, but the places down by Times Square, they're not. It's not like they're going to be going to restaurants. There's a lot of like street food, a lot of stuff to get quick lunches there. And the Bubba Gump restaurant is included, as well as breakfast at the hotel.
And can you talk about chaperones?
Yeah, so chaperones, we get included in our price, 1 chaperone per 10 students. I think we're going to extend that a little bit. So right now, it's looking like we're going to be able to have for middle school groups of either 5 or 6 students with a chaperone, and for high school groups of either 9 or 10 students with a chaperone. So we'll keep the kind of ratios small. And chaperones will be responsible for their group. We're also looking into making sure that we have a nurse on the trip as well. That nurse will be responsible for any kind of significant medical needs as well as medication disbursement.
Is it looking like the chaperones will be staff or parents?
Right now, it's looking like staff. If we need to open up to parents, we would.
How many chaperones are you looking?
Right
for?
now, we're looking at 7 chaperones, including the school nurse. We may need to bump it to 8, but I think we can do it with 7.
What's the budget impact for subs and stuff back at the high school?
There shouldn't be much of an impact. With the number of students that we have going on the trip, we'll be able to arrange coverage internally.
So what will happen to students who don't go?
They'll have school. I mean, they'll have either classes with their teachers where they're doing stuff, or assignments if their teacher's not there to work on. I anticipate prior to the trip, maybe some project stuff happening, so that students can continue working on that during the day when they're not there.
Are they going to feel penalized for not going on a trip?
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's pretty typical with trips. Students either have to make up work or there's work when they're there.
Okay.
It may also, I mean, when we've done it in the past too, where assignments that are given during that time are considered extra credit assignments. So they may replace a lower grade if students got it, or just add a higher grade to the mix of points at the end.
So you previously said 47 students?
Yep.
That's about half of population?
About half, yep. And we're still there. We're I think today, so that was with the interest survey. Now with the commitment survey, I think we're at 40, I want to say 44 students as of this afternoon. And the commitment is due by Friday because that's when the first check is, or first deposit is. And we had to order the tickets today.
What grades is this again?
This is the whole school.
7 to 12?
7 to 12th grade. Yep.
I thought 7 through 11 because 12 is having their own field trip. That's what you told us before, that it was 7 through 11.
You're correct. We did talk about that. I'd have to check and see if any seniors signed up, because they do have their own trip. I would have to check on that.
They all know they have the senior trip.
They do all know they have the senior trip. Yes, absolutely. So if they are signing up for this, it would be in addition to that. Um, honestly, to be quite honest, if a senior is really interested in going, and I'd like to give them the opportunity. I don't know that they've had it before at Smith Academy. Um,
Yeah, as long as they know. I mean, if they want to do 2 trips, why not?
yeah, we also have the band trip going as well. So I mean, that's the other another piece. So there we have some students doing that as well.
How do families know that there's financial aid available if needed?
We let them know. Yeah. So whenever a communication goes out about a trip and about the cost, we let them know that we do have resources available. And if it's a hardship, to please reach out to the school. And I cannot think of any time where we have denied that.
Any other questions?
No, looks like fun to me.
You need a motion, or
I do.
I'll make a motion to approve the Smith Academy all-school trip to New York City.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
All right.
Happy travels.
Thank you.
You get to
Thank
go.
you.
I may. It depends. I would love to. And
Do you
I'd
get
like-
to
I'd
go?
like to-
That
I'd
we
like
might
to-
need an
bubble
eighth chaperone.
I'd like to chaperone, but yeah, I also don't want to. If someone else on staff would like to go, I don't want to take that spot from them. All right.
So I am again recognizing it's 9:23. I do want to talk through your update, but you could be brief
Good
in that
news.
and let the committee ask questions.
Absolutely. Good news is I made it pretty brief. So let me open this up. So this is kind of a view from 10,000 feet. I'm not going to go at some point in the next couple of meetings. I will present my report of entry findings. That's not tonight. It's kind of a global view of what those findings are looking like at this point. But here's the mid-year review as it relates to both my goals for evaluation and, well, really as it relates to that, because that includes the incident stuff. So the first goal, to remind everyone, was by late spring, the district will have a broader agreement with key stakeholder groups about the district's most critical needs, how those needs will be addressed most effectively, and how we will measure progress towards meeting those goals. Those are all components of the entry plan through the new superintendent induction program. So far, I've had conversations with multiple stakeholders, staff, families, administration, students. We've met as an enrollment task force that will continue to meet with that. I've talked with fifth grade families about the 6th grade move. Staff meetings. When I started this position last year, I also talked individually with a whole host of teachers about kind of the state of affairs and what they, where they saw things and where they'd like to see things go. And I had those conversations at both schools, and I talked with every staff member who reached out, and many who didn't reach out, who I reached out to. So as a result of those conversations and data that has been collected, I've really identified kind of 6 really broad stroke themes that I think will kind of characterize the entry plan. First, as we've talked about here, is the ELA curriculum cohesion. Maybe there may be a need there to look at some additional resources or new resources around ELA. The second broad theme is that we have a very supportive town and community in Hatfield of the schools. That has played out in recent years, and I think I think we continue to see the benefits of having a supportive town and community. The third major theme is that among our students, and I would add staff here too, but primarily the data is about students, is we have a very strong sense of belonging and support that has come across in SPIFFy data, in vocal data, in many of the SEL assessments that we have done. Students really feel the benefit of having a small, close-knit community. There is a sense for the fourth finding here that we have maybe need to reconnect with what I call our North Star. So there has been a feeling described to me by a number of folks in different contexts as what I would say is being a little bit rudderless, of not kind of knowing necessarily the direction that we are going. And so really need to reestablish, like, hey, who are we as a district? how do we ensure everyone knows who we are as a district, and how do we make sure that our actions reflect those priorities and those goals. And I think really that has the sense has been that really since the COVID kind of recovery year, that has been a little bit lacking. So I'd like to work on reestablishing that. Another major theme that we've seen, and we've talked about even tonight, is the increasing costs, especially related to special education. That's a theme that is statewide, and I would argue nationwide as well. And the sixth major theme, as we've talked about numerous times here too, is declining enrollment. And so stemming sort of the loss of that in bringing enrollment back where it belongs. The next step is going to be a report of entry, so a detailed report of the findings and the data that were used to arrive at those findings, and then working collaboratively with stakeholders on generating the next strategic plan. So our district improvement plan runs through this year, and so it will be time to generate a new one.
Another summer meeting.
Here we go.
Mhm.
Goal 2, the second goal I had was a professional practice goal and is participation in the new superintendent induction program, which I have been doing. There's not much else to be said for that. I've attended those meetings both virtually and in person, and also been working with the administrative team here to implement some of those things we've talked about in terms of joint observations, calibration on what we're looking for academically, and kind of honestly mock debriefs. You know, if we see something in the class that we need to, you know, we agree that there needs to be some kind of critical feedback about, processing how that will look and what those conversations will be like. Next steps, there's really just two, is continuation with the NSIP program and also forming and presenting the report of entry findings and the entry, well, already did the entry plan, but the report of findings and next steps. The third goal I have was focusing on relationships, connections, and belonging. So in terms of progress, we've had a number of shared opportunities between HES and Smith Academy. A couple examples are the homecoming pep rally, Jolly Ball, the band performances, which included students from both schools at each performance this year. We've made social emotional learning a focus at the district and school levels with our district team as well as our school teams. And I won't rehash all of the presentation from before. And also developing coursework responsive to students' interests and needs, which we had talked about a little bit earlier tonight as well. Next steps, really developing and putting together that mentor program that stands for Big Brother, Big Sister-ish, between HES and Smith Academy. So both internally at Smith Academy, but also expanding. You know, we may have. I think we have a really unique opportunity to have some of our older students act as not peer role models, but mentor role models to our younger students, and I could see a whole lot of benefit from that for a number of our students. And also developing a family mentor program for new school choice families. And I will say we have really tried and started to do that a little bit. It didn't really take off in the way that I had thought it might. I think a lot of our school choice families find things are going pretty well, and they find people, and they kind of do that organically without needing, hey, you're from this town, and this family is coming in from this town. We'd like you to be friends. They kind of, oftentimes the folks that we're getting in are from word of mouth from their friends telling them that, so they kind of have a relationship built there already. But I would like to do that for students, or for families and students that may not have that previous connection, to make sure that we are, we're bringing people in. Fourth goal is a student learning goal here is, again, to maintain the focus on academic rigor and instructional excellence. We talked a bit about our joint walkthroughs. Those have been really helpful. It really, what we do is we calibrate. We go through and we all, because typically it's 3 or 4 of us, we observe the same exact lesson. And we debrief about it afterwards about what we saw, and we see if we're kind of on the same page as each other. In those conversations, excuse me. those conversations have been really, really beneficial. We've had data meetings at both HES and Smith Academy. Those have revolved around both academic and social emotional data that we've collected. And then we've also been kind of keeping tabs and keep holding, the administrative team, I would say, has been holding each other accountable for evaluation in that process. And we are on track for this year. We review it weekly at administrative meetings where we all are. This week I'm behind a little bit, but I'm going to get caught up. And then next steps for academic rigor, developing more high-level, high-interest courses aligned with our new in-house dual enrollment partnership. We talked about those. So right now it's looking like next year we're going to offer psychology, food science, leisure studies, and possibly a pre-calc with applications. So possibly four different courses that students can choose from for next year.
What is leisure
Yeah,
studies?
that's my question too.
Leisure studies, and that aligns with our track for adventure leadership. And so it's really about recreation truthfully about recreation in the United States. So how that has changed over, it's kind of part history, part business, how it's changed over the history of the country. It involves public land use as well as kind of private enterprise. It's kind of neat. I'm working with the development group on that.
Is it
Um,
taught out of history? Is
It-
it taught out of?
we haven't thought exactly where that would fall into yet, but I think it would fall into either history. Yeah, I think it would fall into history because it really looks at kind of how what that really what the recreation industry has done over time and how how it has evolved and what kind of areas there are now. And that's a specific course from VSU that aligns with our adventure leadership course.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Fun.
Never have come up with that.
No.
Yeah.
And then again to continue following the evaluation process and rubric for administrators as well as staff. And that I told you it would be quick.
Committee, do you have questions? Yes.
Yes. Kind of for you more than Dr. Driscoll. Because here it says continue to follow evaluation process, and the front slide said superintendent evaluation. As you know, there is a mid-year evaluation as part of the superintendent evaluation. So are we?
We're allowed to do it as a check-in.
Yeah.
We could choose to do it formally, and it would not take a lot to put that together. Would the committee like the opportunity for doing a more formal
I'm-
survey, or can we just do that in May?
Personally, I'm fine with this as a check-in. It was very informative. And using this information in addition to more information in May will be wonderful. So I just wanted to kind of clarify if you were
Yep.
setting us up
Nope.
to do an
I
evaluation.
was not planning on doing that unless the committee would like to do that. And then I think I would like in May to repurpose our tool that we used last year that made the evaluation our own. It took all of the material that the DESI form has and put it into a Google survey that allowed us to populate all of that and do those ratings. And so Dr. Driscoll and I will prep that together so that all of this then fits into what DESI would like us to review. It'll take a little.
So my question then is, you said May. Would we actually be doing it in May or reporting it out in May?
My interest is in that anyone who's sitting on the committee through this year does this before any election season, because what I want to do is make sure that all of the data is collected before elections, so that if there is any turnover, perhaps there won't need to be any turnover, but should there be any turnover, that we're not putting someone new into the spot of having to review someone they weren't around to see.
Right.
that.
So an early May meeting, we would get assigned to do the evaluation. And then in June, we would,
June might be when it was
Was
presented
reported out.
back, but
Got
the
it.
collection would happen.
sounds like excellent timing.
I like that plan. It's a little weird when like my first meeting was like, so we're doing Dr. Wood's review. And it's like, oh,
Yeah. So we're going to try and avoid that. Okay.
Okay.
With that, I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session with no intent to return into the open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to discuss the strategy respective to collective bargaining. Is there a second? And this is a roll call vote. So I will say, Bo, aye.
Engelhardt, aye.
Bench, I.
Green eye.
Sullivan, I.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. And thank you, John.